Hello, writers, and welcome to the Author Burnout Coach. Together, we will dismantle the burnout culture in book publishing and reclaim our love of stories. I am your host, Isabel Sterling, and this is episode 15. Hey, writer loves! Today's podcast was inspired by a bit of advice I received way back in 2015 before I ever had my first agent. It is advice that I have returned to over and over in the 7 years since then, and I am so excited to share it with you today. We're going to go back to the spring of 2015. At the time, I was working on the first draft of what would become my debut, These Witches Don't Burn, and I was actively getting full requests and plenty of rejections on the third novel that I had been querying at that time. So I think it was April of 2015, might have been March, and I had this really fun opportunity to go to a writing retreat in Wales with some friends that I had and also some authors who I hadn't met yet. And one of those authors was actually Victoria Schwab, who during that week we spent together, or 5 days or whatever it was very generous with her advice about the publishing industry. During one of our evening meals, Victoria said something to the effect of, if you stay in publishing long enough, you'll get to experience everything, the good and the bad. And she gave some examples of some of the not so fun stuff, like having a series canceled or having an editor leave in the middle of a project. And then on the fun side, we have things like, hitting a bestseller list, getting awards, getting your book optioned for TV or film. In the 7 years since I heard that bit of advice, I have returned to it often, and it has allowed me to look at the speed bumps that have been, part of my path to publication and see them as proof that I was, doing it right. I was determined to stick around long enough so that I would be able to experience the good parts too. And when I think back on that advice, with the additional lens that I have now with my training as a life coach, it fits so beautifully into the concept of life being 50-50. So in life, whether you are stretching to achieve impossible dreams or simply settling into the life that you currently have, you are always going to experience a mix of positive and negative emotions, and it is always going to shake out to be right around half and half positive and negative. So there's good and bad in everything. Every life choice has bits that are fun and bits that are boring, parts that are exciting and sections that are mundane. No matter what your external circumstances are, there will be joy and frustration, love and loss. In writing, there are the external circumstances that Victoria mentioned that we generally agree are either good or bad. Like we have hitting, a bestseller list. Generally, we all think that's a good thing. Or having a series canceled midway through, which generally we think is, not the best. And if we want to be in this for the long haul, we have to be willing to experience all of it. Now, if you remember my explanation of the model from episode 11, you know that circumstances aren't, inherently positive or negative. Getting your series canceled isn't technically, truly inherently bad. It doesn't automatically make you feel shitty. Our emotions come from our thoughts about a situation. So we're going to dig into that for the rest of this podcast. So let's say you're working towards a goal of having your first novel published. Or if you're further along in your writing career, simply insert whatever book number you're on or whatever goal you're currently pursuing. So right now, in the pursuit of that goal, you are experiencing a blend of emotions. And the nuances are going to be different for every person, but it might sound something like this. You're over the moon excited when you get a full request in from an agent, and then you're frustrated or maybe even devastated when a rejection comes in. And while you're writing your next project, sometimes you are just completely lit up inside by inspiration and it is like the most genius idea you've ever had. And other times you are so bored by your ideas that you don't know why you ever even wanted to be a writer in the first place. The same will actually still be true when you achieve your goal. So when you get your first book deal or publish your first indie project or publish book number 10, whatever you're on, you are still going to have a 50-50 life. The first time you walk into a bookstore and see your novel on the shelf will be magical. I still remember walking into Barnes& and Noble and I got to see a whole stand right in the front of the store filled with copies of These Witches Don't Burn. It was so cool. It was surreal. I felt so much pride and love and awe in that moment. But also, maybe a few seconds later, I also worried about how sales would go and would I be able to write a sequel that's good enough to follow this debut novel? And, what if this is the only series I ever get to write? So I achieved the goal, but I was still me. I had all the same worries and insecurities that I'd always had. And at the time, I certainly did not have coaching or thought work to help me navigate and feel those feelings and be okay with it. Even though all of the sort of negative stuff is still there, that's kind of what I love about it. Like, I love that life is 50-50 no matter what because there's no escaping it. And if there is no way to escape that experience, there's no reason to deny yourself what you want most. If you decide to give up on your writing career and pick something that's more predictable, you're still going to have a 50-50 life. You're still going to have that blend of positive and negative emotions no matter what. And if that's true, why not go after the things that you know deep down that you desire? Why not feel uncomfortable because you're stretching and growing towards a goal if the alternative is to still feel uncomfortable while you say the same? Now, of course, I want to give a couple of caveats here, which also caveat is like my new favorite word. I feel like I say it all the time, even when I'm not podcasting. It's just such a fun word. Anyway, and I'm going to give some of those caveats because society is full of some really toxic ideas when it comes to goal setting and self-improvement. Thank you, patriarchy. You're an asshole. So the first is I don't want you setting goals in an effort to chase worthiness. And two, I don't want you setting goals just because it's something society says that you should want. So for number one, I want you to know that you are 100% worthy as a human right now, exactly as you are. Nothing changes that. Not success, not failure, not more or less money, not being traditionally published or independently published. None of that alters your worth as a person. Your worth cannot change. It is always 100%. So going after goals is super fun and you can do it because it's amazing to see that you want something and say, hey, I'm going to make that happen. But we're not in this endless pursuit of perfection in order to be worthy of love or any of that. You are already worthy. And number two, I am not about chasing goals unless it's what you want. There is something really special about being able to recognize your desires and then being brave enough to say, I want that. I am going to make that happen for me. And even if you don't achieve it right away or ever, the act of and the practice of acknowledging your desire and then trying to bring that into reality, that in and of itself is so powerful. And I'll actually go ahead and give you a recent example of where this is going on in my life. So while I was at the Life Coach School Mastermind a couple of weeks ago, the school announced that they had opened applications for their Master Coach training. And as they were talking about it, there was this little feeling in my chest, this little bit of longing and the sense that that is for me. And not in this like fear of missing out, FOMO, like I won't be good enough without that sort of way, which can sometimes happen. So you do want to check in with yourself and make sure like you're not wanting something just because you don't want to miss it. But as I'm sitting there, in this mastermind, there's 1,500 coaches in the room, and I'm listening to the stories of the folks who had just gone through Master Coach training and how it had changed their life. I hear this little voice in my head that said, like, I belong in that room. I guess my soul, we can call it that. My soul was like, I am going to be a Master Coach someday. So I decided that I was going to apply. Of course, I have a messy human brain just like you, so there was plenty of doubt that came after making that decision. Lots of, well, I just got certified last year. Maybe I'm not ready. I'm sure there are people who've been doing this longer than me or who are better than me at coaching who are going to get in and, I don't need it yet. Maybe I shouldn't even bother trying. And one of my brain's favorite is like, well, that's not right for right now. Maybe next year. And even with all of those things going in my head, I decided that I was committed to going after the things that I want. So I did. I applied. And it was a pretty involved application. I had to submit recordings of me coaching and teaching and self-assessments and a bunch of personal statements about why I'm a good fit and where I see myself in 10 years and how this training is going to help me get there. And I had to go through all of that. And, I won't know for another month or so whether I'm accepted. But at this point, it kind of doesn't matter. Getting accepted, while would be great, matters way less than the fact that I was willing to try. I was willing to put myself out there and say, this is what I want. And through the act of doing that and the act of having to work through the application, I learned so much about myself and what I want and what I envision for the publishing industry. I have big goals of really changing the foundation of this industry so that it is not built on authors who are so burnt out, that it's something that can be more equitable. Just the act of saying that I'm going to try to make that happen is really powerful. And the same is true for your writing goals and my writing goals too. Remember, I am a coach, but I'm still very much an author at heart. That is why author comes first when I talk about being an author and coach. With your writing goals, simply showing up and putting in the work, regardless of the outcome, that can change your relationship to yourself and to your goals in life-changing ways. Like, I want you to imagine if you showed up for your goals for the next 10 years, if you were willing to feel the full range of emotions that come with being human, like, who would you be? Not anyone more worthy, just as a spoiler, but someone different. And not different in a less you way, but a more you way. Someone who is closer to the truest version of you. And how fucking cool would that be? I am living a life right now that I could not have even dreamed of 10 years ago. It is incredible, and it's fun, and it's like magic. And it's also annoying and frustrating and boring and incredibly painful sometimes too. Now, if you're a parent, you have a great example of this in your kids. I have never in my life felt the love or the level of love and grief that I do feel now as a foster parent. And I'm willing to feel the sort of anticipatory grief and the worry for him and all of that in order to experience the love and to be able to give that sort of gift to him of having a really loving home while he's, his bio mom's trying to be able to do what she needs to do to reunite with him. With that in mind, I want to offer you an invitation. I want you to take stock of where you are right now. I want you to write down all the things that are amazing about your life. And I want you to write down all the ways that you experience discomfort or sadness. I want you to see where you have both. And then I want you to think about the dream that you are chasing, the next writing milestone that is calling to your heart. How is that going to be amazing? And how will it still also be uncomfortable? Ask yourself, are you willing to have it all, the good and the bad, in pursuit of the life that you want? And I really hope the answer to that is yes. And if you want a guide on that journey, someone to help you get better at feeling both the positive and negative of life, I invite you to work with me. My Love Writing Again program begins May 1st, and it would be my honor to help you say yes to your dreams. Until next time, my writer loves, happy writing, and I will see you next week.